you so much for joining us again for Magnifying Our Impact. And today I'm really excited about who I'm interviewing because there are a couple of people in my life over the last couple of decades that have truly inspired me with regards to having a macro view of the world and really understanding what we can achieve in our lives and in our families to make a really big impact in the world. And, you know, this guy sits, for me, not only does he sit in my heart as a truly great friend, but also as somebody who thinks differently. And he really does think at a macro level and has achieved so much for himself, for his family, for the communities that he shares his life with, but also in the wider world, and has traveled so much and inspired so many people around the world to look to think big and do the same, and to create an opportunity for us to really achieve. So with that, I'd love to introduce you to Reg, a great friend of mine, Reg Athwal. And I struggle with this introduction now because the guy's done so much. But in essence, I'd love to just give a personal introduction from the heart in saying that I met Reg about 17 years ago, I think now, at a great organization that we call the Professional Speakers Association. And when I was just a budding speaker 17 years ago and wanted to learn about what this industry is all about and how to communicate at a high level, I went to one of these meetings, and Reg at the time was president of our regional association. And Reg gave us a speech about how to mastermind, how to really connect to people, and who we spend our life with is absolutely who we do become, and to really look at thinking big. And I remember, you know, just sitting there, just rocking back and thinking, wow, that's such an inspiring talk. And then Reg became the president of the Professional Speakers Association in the UK. And I was very lucky to be in a mastermind group with Reg. And he's gone on to speak at thousands of different events around the world. He now runs RTS Global Partners, which advises and speaks to first to sixth generation businesses all around the world. You know, he's advised over 124 group families worldwide, impacting over 6.2 billion US dollars of investment. So, you know, and run big organizations in his own right from when he was very, very young. So I've probably taken your entire introduction now, Reg, and told everybody myself. But if you could just, first of all, Reg, thank you. And thank you for being here. And I'm really excited to be talking to you today. So welcome.
Thank you very much. And Craig, you know, thanks for your kind words. I really appreciate it. We've over 17 years, we've met so many times in professional environments, as well as just personally hanging out, exchanging ideas. But, you know, it's nice to be able to do something like this. And for me, it's special because it's a digital asset. You know, I've been doing this as well for the last few years. And I found with families, if you can create good content like this as you're doing, and interviewing really great people, asking great questions, this is not just about your brand and your audience and your clients, but I think also for people like me, if I'm sharing it with my children and one day my grandchildren that are not in this world today, one day they will be here, can watch something like this, and it becomes what we refer to as a digital asset. You know, so it's priceless. So thank you. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you. And Reg, you know, you're now advising enormous family businesses around the world, but that's obviously not where you've been in human capital and understanding the power that we have. But if you can take me back to the beginning of your career or even before then, give us a few minutes potted history of where you've come from and where you are today.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I think really the link and some of the key things from childhood that has an impact on why did I get into human capital and why did I end up going down this path with family businesses is an important insight. And hopefully, as I share this story, I would urge the audience, the viewers, to think about key things that may have happened in their childhood that they could be clues in what your purpose could be in life. So let me share the story. My family business really started from my grandfather. So he was the first generation entrepreneur in India. And cutting a long story short, he built a sizable estate of assets and wealth. lots of second generation members, boys and girls, and my father was the eldest of the boys. Okay, there were 3 boys. So that's a second generation. And my father had a chance to migrate to the UK when he was 13 years of age. And soon after that, we've got very small gaps between each generation. And 21 years after my father got married, I was born, and I became the eldest of the 3rd generation. So growing up in the UK, we had this phone call. I remember I was around 9.5 years of age, and the phone rang. My dad picked up the phone, and you could just see something was wrong. You know, he just sat there shocked, wouldn't say anything. Then we asked him what's happening, and then he told me that my grandfather has just passed away. And that day changed everything, because every year we used to go from the UK to India to meet family, and not long after that, he went into a war with my uncles, his brothers, over the estate, over the assets. And this war went on for 30 plus years, by the way, including 3 heart conditions for my father. And I've managed to resolve a bit of it, but there's still a lot of other things still to be resolved. And I grew up watching this, and eventually my father said to me one day, you know, those people that we've been meeting in India every year we call family, they're no longer family. And I didn't get that. I couldn't understand that. How could they be family one minute and now they're not family? And I think that's really the first insight for me looking back, where that had an impact on me, where I started reading a lot from the age of 15. I got into personal development by the time I was 16, 17. I had this thirst for knowledge. I was reading more about self-help, HR, human capital, psychology-related books. And that's really how the journey started, with the first part of my career, to get involved in that industry sector, and also learning about executive search, which was great because it enabled me to understand psychology, interviewing skills, assessment, evaluation of people. And that's really where the career started from a young age, and building various businesses predominantly in my 20s, and succeeding and failing. And it's only until 18 years ago, I came across my first family business, which heard me speak at a conference and invited me to visit the family in Saudi Arabia. And at that time, they were saying to me, we've got business issues, Reg, could you help us with succession planning, building great teams, our HR piece for our businesses? And will you come and visit us and meet the family and see what we're doing? And Craig, I was there for 3 days. I met 47 family members in one family conglomerate. And at the time, they were a $400 million business. And I realized after 3 days that where they were telling me they had business issues, I could see from talking to the different family members over 3 days, they didn't have any business issues. They had family issues. And what I could see, they could not see. And it reminded me of my childhood straight away. And I think literally on that day, maybe subconsciously, maybe not consciously at this stage, but subconsciously, I'd made a decision that this is what I should be doing. And combining that with the human capital thing that was still doing really well, and engaging with clients and speaking around the world and training, running workshops, the two sort of came together. Whereas I worked with one family business and another very privately. There was no marketing collateral, websites. It was all very private work. It got to a point where eventually, you know, it was done. It was like, I brought these two things together. I know my purpose in life. I've just got to help as many families as I can to make sure they build legacies and overcome any issues that they have and put the right structures in. So that's how it started. And from then, it's really grown into, not like you've already mentioned, not only impacting hundreds of families and thousands through our educational programs, but it's been it's very fulfilling. It's very fulfilling when I look back at some of the clients 15 years ago, where I'm now referred to as Uncle Reg with the kids.
Yeah.
And those kids were maybe 15 around then, and now they're like 25, 26, 30. Some of them have joined the business or their business. And I'm part of that family.
You know, some of us, we come into this world with a lot, I think, genetically and environmentally when we're a kid. You obviously had lots of hopes and dreams when you were younger. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had this mindset, this vision. So just talk to me a little bit more. What do you think started all of this? You've got an unusual mindset. What happened? Or have you just always been this way?
I think there's a combination of things there, Craig, that people, again, watching this need to evaluate. I think let's go surface and then go deep. Surface level, we all have strengths and weaknesses as human beings. Okay, and that's why we did 15 years of research with our book that was published, which was around all the different dynamics in families and what makes this person like this and what makes this person like this. So at surface level, I think we've all got certain strengths and weaknesses. There's certain things in our genetics where they're very natural for us. And for me, how do you know that? If the vibration of natural is I'm doing something, it doesn't feel like work, it's easy and I love it, that's the right vibration. So for me, it's about discovering that first. And for some people, they don't discover that until their mid-40s to mid-50s, which is such a shame. And if kids could realize that from a young age, or parents can help them, I think people can accelerate their growth and success in life from a very young age. So for me, there's that. You've then got natural, on the surface level, natural weaknesses, which is obviously the opposites, things we force ourselves to do sometimes, but we know inside our body's going, you don't like this, you hate it, why are you doing this? And we know we don't like it. And that's another vibration, another frequency in the body that's saying, look, you don't need to do that. Have someone else do that. Buddy up with someone, build a team, bring someone else in, bring in a freelancer who can do that. So there's that. And then there's what I refer to the second layer, going below the surface now, is acquired things. So acquired things would be from parents, grandparents, people who influence us definitely before the age of 7. And we acquire things. So we end up mimicking our parents or our grandparents as we become older. And again, for those of you watching this right now, I'm sure there's certain things you're doing right now that is part of your DNA, which you know is a copy and paste and model and mimicking maybe someone who influenced you as a child. Mm-hmm. So those 3 things is what I normally look at first, and the journey I've been through on strengths, acquired skills, weaknesses. So those sort of near the surface. Now go deeper. If we go deeper, then don't we have a little bit of all our forefathers? Mm-hmm. Won't I have a little bit of my grandfather in me and my grandmother? Mm-hmm. What about my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, who I have no idea who that is? Imagine that bloodline 500 years ago. Where was it? Mm-hmm. What environment did they live in? There's got to be a bit of all of that in me somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that those are the things that I look at, and all of that combined is who you become. And then I think the rest is people come along in your life as you grow up and influence you, the influencers. So for me, there's definitely 2 people that influence. In fact, I can think of 3 people outside of family that influenced me. One was someone we used to call the computer man, which was one of my dad's friends. And he was a real geek, back in the day, dealing with big IBM mainframe computers, 5,000 square foot of IBM mainframe computers. And now our mobile phone can do all of that. Yeah. And he took me one day to his offices. He said, look, it's a weekend, I'm going in, I'd love to, because I had this fascination about computers at the time. And he took me and he showed me his IBM mainframe computers. And I think he definitely influenced me with the geeky side of innovation and technology. Then I remember the entrepreneur, another one of my dad's friends who was a serial entrepreneur, and 2 families came together one day and decided to do a road trip around Europe. So our family and their family clubbed together, and I sat in, at that time, it was a brand new, customized pearl white Granada, okay? if we go back in the day, but it was beautiful. And I asked him questions, what do you do? Is travel business? And I thought, wow, I'd love to be an entrepreneur. This guy's just got it. And okay, maybe it was the wrong thing at the time, because I ended up getting attached to the material aspect, which was my own journey I had to go through in life, which is not just all about material things and money. This is a byproduct of providing value. So he had an impact. And the third person who made the most impact was when I was 17, 18 years of age, got involved in my first business, and I came across a management consultant who was doing some programs. And I said, wow, I'd love to be able to speak like you. He was great on stage. And this guy changed my life. He said to me, I see something in you. I'll coach you. Why don't you introduce me one day at one of my workshops? I'm like, really? And I think when he gave me that opportunity and he coached me through doing that, that day also changed my life. Because now if you look back, you've got 3 people outside of the family problem that happened that impacted me, the DNA part of what I've mentioned, but 3 people from a technology point of view, innovation, being creative, being an entrepreneur, being a management consultant advisor who was a speaker. All those in the melting pot are part of who I am today.
And Reg, you mentioned throughout those different levels of looking at our behaviors and, to go deeper, the fabric of who we are, and then the genetics of our forefathers, and, the environment that we grow up in, and the number of people that have truly influenced you and shaped who you become, both genetically and environmentally. During that, you've mentioned a couple of times about becoming successful. How would you define success? Because there's obviously lots of people watching who are in all different places, and some people, as we know, we'd look at as enormously successful and they don't think they are, and vice versa. There's people that, that feel that they're successful, whatever they've done externally, because emotionally they love who they are. So how can you define success?
I think success, if I break down success, teen, young adult years, 20s, 30s, 40s, it's been an evolution. So what I would have called success in my 20s is not success today. And I think unless you've experienced all the different facets of success, then you get to that realization. And I'm sure as I hit my decade of 50s, I think success will evolve further. And I've seen it with clients. I've seen it with working with millionaires and billionaires of family businesses. And I can see definitely a trend where the ones who are in their 60s and 70s and 80s have definitely found success to be giving back, making a contribution. A lot of them are running foundations, and they feel that's their sense of contribution and purpose. In my 20s, it was all materialistic. It was all about money. It was all about making money. Okay, and then having made it and lost it. One of my startups was a startup, took it to a $20 million business in 4.5 years, but I pretty much lost it all after that. And because I didn't really appreciate it. I didn't appreciate, it was just chasing it. If I had more of it, maybe that meant I was more successful. And that was false, because that was all driven by ego, or secretly I was looking for more appreciation from my father, or because I never had it as a child, for him to turn around and say, hey, you're doing a good job, well done. So I think we get lost sometimes in these things. I think in today's world with social media, I don't think it helps. I think there's a lot of people, talking about materialistic things and making the quick buck. My 30s came more about building something, building teams, contribution where I could serve people, make them successful, get them on the right path, and in turn I would be successful. Linking that to then the family business side, I got to a point where if I can help enough families build their legacy, I will in turn build my own legacy with my family. Yeah. So now I'm driven by deep purpose. Deep purpose as a mission. Some people call it a mission, where all I know is one thing, which is when it comes to success and money, we don't really need a lot to have a good quality of life.
No.
I've realized that. And I think with the crisis this year, you really appreciate that even more when you're in your home for a couple of months and you're not using your car, and you're not traveling, you appreciate it even more. So I think from a money point of view, you don't really need much to have a good quality of life. And then the rest is all about the more people we can serve, give value to, and yeah, they're going to pay us for that service.
Yeah.
The wealth part will automatically be there. And then you get to a point where, what do you do with the money? And I think it's all about then giving back. It's all about then, like Bill Gates has done, Melinda Gates, Bill Gates with their foundation. I know the quality work that you've been doing with Giving Africa over the years, and now some of your new initiatives. And that probably comes from, your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
History. Because when you've got wealth, I think you end up with two types of people, especially kids. You end up with either success could mean, well, I want to prove to my family how good I am, and ego comes in, and then they need to spin off something else to show the rest of the family that they can also be great entrepreneurs. Others will just become custodians of that wealth and go, look, I'll just put it in a better place for the next generation. And a third person is just not even driven by any of that. They just want to do a bit of good. They don't want to build a business. They have nothing like that in their body. It's just, I just want to help people. And because the wealth is there, they can. Regarding, what is success? I think success can mean different things to different people. But ultimately, yes, money has always been, I think money is just a way of measuring how well you've done.
Reg, with that, connected to success, or what for me sits behind whatever we choose to frame as success, is, and you've mentioned this a number of different times, and me and you come from exactly the same place with this, is for me, if I speak for myself, and you said it today, everything comes from a place of purpose. And so, and for me, purpose is now the epicenter of absolutely everything for me. It's the center of everything I do, who I am, what I create, my emotional, physical, and financial legacy.
Yeah.
Is at the heart of all of that is purpose. Just to find, because I think, the ladies and gentlemen that are listening predominantly are either looking at their own philanthropic endeavor and how they can contribute in that way. And there's other people listening that are running organizations predominantly in the non-for-profit sector of, community interest companies, social enterprises, charities. And we all want to create impact. All of us want to have a positive impact, to create positive change and learning throughout the world. That's what we're here for. And I think at the center of this, it's for us to, like you said, get clarity as to our purpose. So define for us, what is purpose? How would you teach us about how we find our purpose?
Yeah, great question, Craig. One of the tools that we've got that we use with our clients is called VIP. So we have this toolkit that over sort of 100 family businesses have been through, and we summarize it on one piece of paper, one sheet. And we use that for every board meeting, okay? And to keep us on track of what we call VIP. So VIP is as follows, I'll break it down. The V is for vision. So where are we going? And where can change? Where is like end of the rainbow? The rainbow can shift. Yeah. Or what's the trophy at the end of the rainbow? What's that treasure box look like? What's in it? So a vision can mean different things for different people. So where are we going? And typically we end up building with families in particular 20 to 30 year visions. Normal businesses, profit or non-profit, what view do they have? Most people have a 5-year view. If they're really good, they may have a 10-year view. But if we're going to build legacies and 100-year legacies, because only 3% of family businesses get to 100 years plus. And even if you're non-profit, social entrepreneurship is important to you. You're a charity, you're a non-profit organization. It doesn't matter about corporates or even family business. The principle is the same, which is what could the next 100 years look like? And when we link it to what you said about impact, if we're really making an impact, what could that vision look like for the next 100 years? And I think that's really important. That's the V. The I is intentions. And intentions is driven by determination and willpower. It's not a goal. It's not wishy-washy. And I won't go into too much detail with that for today, but the intention would be essentially what must happen to get there. So that could be something that's broken down into short to medium type steps. But let's get to the P. The P is purpose, with the question that you asked me. The purpose is why. Why are we doing this? So we've got where are we going? We've got the where. We've got the intentions of what must happen to get there. But the purpose is the deepest motivator that will keep us going in good times and bad times to fulfill the mission or the vision, which is why. My story about my childhood is deeply ingrained in my brain, which gives me the why. It gets me out of bed every morning. It doesn't matter what is going on, coronavirus or no coronavirus. I will wake up every morning going, right, who else can I add value to with the time that I have in this world? Because let's face it, we've got a real short period of time. From our first breath to our last breath. The average is 75, 76 years on the planet. And a different conversation could be around what happens with your soul. That's a different spiritual type conversation. But from a physical body point of view, 75, 76 years. And we give it so much significance while our feet are on the ground on planet Earth. But if we zoom out and we're looking at Earth from the moon and zoom out further and look from the galaxy, what are we? We're a dot. We're a small dot. And in time and space, the 75, 76 years is like that. And yet, we give it all this significance in 75 cents. So for me, purpose is about doing good. It's not just about building companies. It's about whatever our enterprise is doing, like you're into social entrepreneurship, which I love. And I think that's the future, which is what are we doing that's doing good, not only to human beings, but planet Earth. Because we're all energy. We're all linked to this Earth, this energy, and we're a small dot in it.
Yes.
So if we're not creating impact at that level, then essentially all we're doing is destroying it. We're destroying it. And we're not going to leave the world in a better place. We're not going to even allow planet Earth to build its own legacy. And maybe what I'm saying is a bit deep. But that's my version of real impact and purpose. But at a small level could be, hey, if I can make a difference to 100 people's lives, what I'm doing, then you've played your part in that jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes so much sense to me. And it's so clear. How you've shared it is so clear. You talked about, Reg, universal systems, planetary systems, and microsystems for me, where we can impact our family and the people around us. And you talked about our legacies and how, as a dot, we can create impact. And sometimes, we may well be destroying things rather than growing and developing and nurturing things. When you look at the problems and the difficulties that surround us, as we're talking today, we're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and there's obviously been hundreds of wars and famines and different tragedies throughout even our history, unfortunately, on our planet. As you sit here now with all the experience and everything that you've seen in the world, what do you think are our biggest challenges going forward over the next couple of decades? What's the biggest challenge you see in the world today? And how do you feel that we can either manage this or overcome it?
The truth to answering that question is I don't know. That's the truth. Because if we did, if we had a crystal ball, I don't know. But all I can do is give my opinion on that. And I think that I have two thoughts on this, two parallel thoughts, which is, there's the yin and yang, there's black and white, there's two sides of the same hand. Even if we keep slicing the hand open, keep layering, there's still going to be two sides. And we know that the sun is out during the day, it will go and sleep or rotate on the other side of the globe and come back the next day. So this whole opposite, north and south, yin and yang, black and white, good or bad, I think it will always be there. So now, when it comes to crisis and what's going on around the world, here's the contradiction now, yeah? It is whatever's bad, well, sometimes the bad stuff may need to happen in order for the good to come through. But then if you've got too much good and we're not developing or growing, then eventually bad will have to come back in again, because that may shake it up to then develop more good. So I suppose my theory on it and my opinion on it is that it's okay. You know, whatever's going on, it's okay. Don't read too much into it. Even with coronavirus right now, yes, I know we'll end up with a vaccine, whether it's 12 months, 18 months, people will have it. Same as any other diseases that have happened in the world over the last 100 years. But if you look at the death rate, and even if it slows down and carries on over 12, 18, 24 months, it's still not going to hit numbers close to other things that kill us. You know, more people drown every year or commit suicide than the number of fatality or the fatality rate and the deaths of coronavirus. So when you give it perspective, whatever's happening is happening, and this disease has come along. There's a reason for it. Okay, is it bad? Yeah, you could have an interpretation it's bad. But then what's the good? There's got to be good that comes out of it. And I think good is already happening because of the way people are rethinking their model, they're rethinking remote working. The whole employment world, I think, is going to change. Innovation, how we're using technology, social entrepreneurship, caring for people. You know, wow, you know, that's good. What's suddenly happened in terms of our presence on our radar. It's right in front of us now. Before it may have been down here, but now it's right in front of us of how we care for people. So I think it's just going to keep evolving and evolving and evolving and evolving. And I think going back to planet Earth, Mother Nature, doesn't matter what human beings do, she will sort it out how she wants to if human beings get too carried away and do stupid things. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And if that means death, if that means people dying, then that may be what happens to bring it back to order, bring it back to balance. I don't know, again, if I'm going off tangent.
No, and 100%. And again, it's very clear to me. And for me, as I'm listening to your answer there, it's my thing about we live in two worlds, an internal world and an external world. And as the external world is there as a metaphor for me to be able to learn and grow and say, this is the stimulus, this is what's going on around me, this is what I'm learning from, this is my teacher, this is the classroom of life. And how I then choose to give and contribute and interact with what's just happened is the piece, right? Yeah. Because I can't, how I then live my purpose, whether it's these kids in front of me dying of malaria or I'm in a football stadium or whatever, it's how I am myself.
Yeah, and also to add to that, Craig, I think, if there was one thing I'd like to see transform in the world, one thing, and then the rest is down to nature and whatever happens, would be really down to, well, actually there's two things. It's ego surrounded with greed and power linked to war. So I think for me, that's the piece that I've also got to play a part. I've got to find a way of creating positive impact in the area. Because here's the movie that keeps getting replayed over and over again over generations. If there's a war and there's a child that's impacted because he or she has lost, their parents, you've already created the same cycle again, because that person's now saying, I'm going to get you back, revenge. And that person's dreaming about it every day to a point where that plays out again 20, 30 years, 40 years in the future. So I think that's something that really has to transform. Yes. And the opposite side of that hand is peace. So, and it doesn't matter about natural disasters and evolution, but if we can create a little bit more peace, I mean, you can still have arguments, you can still have disagreements.
Yeah.
It's okay, but it doesn't mean that you have to wipe out entire city or country and go to war. And I think that linked with ego, I don't know in our lifetime or even generations after us whether that will be resolved.
There's so much I want to ask you, Reg, and I know that, I'm conscious that if I ask all the questions that we have, that we'll only be in this interview for like 4 or 5 days. I'm super conscious that you've given us so much so far, and I'm thinking all the time that you're answering my questions is, how can I go deeper? How can I understand more and get more clarity as to this? It's because it's fantastic. And I wanted to ask another question because this interview for me has focused mostly for me on purpose and clarity and contribution. And those 3 things, purpose and clarity, purpose of what our legacy is and what our why, what's the reason we're doing this, clarity of our vision, and what's our path.
I mean, with contribution, because you've hit on something else. I share a story with you because we've all got our part to play. It's not all about running big charities. It's not all about big businesses. We've all 7.7 billion people on the planet. If they discover their purpose and discover their talents, something they can do good with, has got a role to play. So it's a bit like many years ago when I was doing a speech in India, in Mumbai. I had an early morning flight, landed around 5 a.m. And by the time I got into the taxi, it's still early morning. And I remember stopping at the traffic lights. The driver just stopped at the traffic light. I looked out and I saw a row of buses, one after another as we slowed down to the traffic lights. And I noticed a whole bunch of the drivers huddled together talking. And I noticed a whole bunch of the buses were dirty. But this one guy, as we parked up, I looked out and he was, he was smiling, or maybe he was singing, and he was just cleaning this bus. And you could see that he was dressed like all the others. He was the driver. And I thought, and as I was going to this conference, getting ready for later on in the day to speak at this conference, I used that story because I said, that's the guy I'd want to hire in my company.
Yeah, 100%.
And that guy is living his purpose.
Yes,
he's contributing at a high vibration level.
Yeah.
And if it all 7
and everybody that gets on his bus. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because he feels good about his bus and who he's serving every day.
Yes.
So I think at a micro level, or even at a ground level, even if that could happen with everyone that we're with, then people are on track.
Yeah, great place. Absolutely. So with that, Reg, if I ask you to summarize this by giving some advice, is if you had 1 or 2 pieces of advice for people who are, say, for example, if I paint this story that there's many people that I'm talking to right now that 6 months ago, their business or their organization was flying along very nicely. And the coronavirus has come along. And now they feel that things are falling apart. Or they're just getting going. And, that they need to build something now. So what's your advice? Give us 1 or 2 pieces of advice. What would you advise them around right now? What do they need to do or be or think about right now?
Well, I wrote an article on this yesterday, which got published, was answering that exact question. And I broke it down to 9 thought patterns and strategies. And I will send it to you, and maybe with your viewers, forward it to them. But I'll take a few of those things in the article that I wrote. Let's focus on a few things. If you're running a business, profit, non-profit organization, but an organization, the first thing is employees, people that you have today, your team around you. There will always be a vibration in a crisis situation of fear, doubt, confusion. And as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as leaders, when we know that that's happening, what do we do about it? If we have fear, doubt, and confusion, there's no way you're going to help your organization. Zero. So the first thing is to look in the mirror and go through that process yourself. And typically that process means, people get angry, they blame people, or they're in denial about what's going on, or they're just hoping the market will pick up next month or the month after, we'll be okay. But they're not really doing anything about it. In fact, I've come across leaders in the last couple of months who have buried their head in the sand. So what they've done is they've reduced their communication with their workforce or customers. They've reduced the communication because they don't know what to do. They're burying their head in the sand. So the first thing is get your head out the sand, okay? Go through this process of accepting what's going on. It's real. Don't pray and hope. You could still do that in the evenings before you go to bed. But wake up and go, right, what do I need to do? What do we need to do? First thing, start communicating with every single person on a more, increase the frequency of communication. Every day, speaking to your team. Include them into how you're feeling and how you're thinking. The more they're part of that, the more you'll solve the problems quicker. And when things get better, those people will stick around with you because trust and loyalty will be there. But if you're not going to include them and you're not going to give them that leadership and communicate together, they're the first people that will leave your organization in the future when things get well. Loyalty and trust is out the window. So that's, for me, a base level. Now, with that communication, what do you do next? Let's first think about financials. This is really important. From a financial point of view, you have to get into daily updates of your cash flow forecast. So for me right now, the cash flow forecast of inflow coming in to pay for whatever you do to keep the business in survival and revival mode and then eventually thrive again next year, one needs to look at 9 months of inflow cash flow forecast to the end of this year. It's got to be updated daily. And then you've got to play what I call the what if game. And the what if game is, what's the best case scenario? And what else could happen where that becomes the worst case scenario? Lockdown carries on longer. The economy gets worse. This happens with currencies around the world. Oil drops further. Whatever. Come up with the assumptions and get to a point where you go, right, the worst case really that we're looking at here is maybe a 50% drop in our revenues or inflow, okay? Worst case is 25%. Oh, wow. Actually, the worst case could be 90%. So if we're on top of that, that can start eliminating fear, doubt, because you're now starting to create certainty.
Yes.
Yeah. Then the same has to happen with the outflow. Who are your suppliers? What are your fixed and variable costs? And now look at the two, and you can start to get an idea of what key decisions need to be made. Do you have to make that harsh decision, critical decision that some of your workforce has to be made redundant? Do some of them have to go part-time? Do some of them need to go on unpaid leave for a couple of months? I've just gone through, Craig, a scenario as another tip, where think about all the people in your organization last year that didn't perform. The coronavirus was just the tipping point to, you should have made the decision earlier. So maybe there are people that aren't going to put energy into the mission and the purpose and the vision. And it is time to call it a day. Now, some people will go, Reg, that's just the wrong thing to do. Yeah, again, there's no right or wrong. I've got a client right now who's got 5,000 employees. And he said to me very clearly, even with the worst case scenario, even if I have to deplete my assets, okay, I'm going to make sure I do not get rid of any single person in my organization. It's my duty. They're my family. While there's others that will go, no, we're going to make a 25% cut immediately because if we don't, we're not going to survive.
Right.
How do we rebuild if we don't survive?
Right.
So these are some things. Other things in that article that I published was around innovation. It's time to look at your business model. It's time to reevaluate your product or service. It's time to reevaluate how you communicate with your customers, your offering. It's just a chance to refresh everything. And that could be a game changer for the organization for 2021, for the next growth cycle. But now's the time to do it. So I hope that helps. But those are a few things to consider. There is a longer list, and I'll get that to you. But those are a few
please. Reg, thank you so much for all of this. It's been great, really great talking to you. And there's so much in there. It's so clear the way in which you've described it. And it's very rich talking to you and learning and understanding more. And I've put, obviously, people can find you, your bio and your websites and your work is going to be with this interview. But please also send me those articles, and then we can click on all the rest of the articles and we can put it up. Love to you and the family. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing in the world to help all of us. And this has been great talking to you. Thank you. Cheers, Reg.
Thank you very much, Craig.
Thank you so much.